Hello, and welcome back to the Parasocial podcast, where we're here for you. Yes, that's right, you, the viewer.
And we swear that this episode will be better than episode 2.
We'll see how this goes. Anyway.
I mean, whatchamacallit, like, I've been twiddling my thumbs ready for this topic today.
Yeah, I know, because I know for the most part, we've had quite a lot to talk about with this discussion, and, well, this topic more so than anything like that, so, as if it's not already spelled out by clicking on the video and whatnot, we're talking about fandom and fandom culture and all that sort of shit like that. You know what I mean?
Fandoms, fandom culture, fandom infighting, fandom killing each other, fandom blowing things up. Nah, fucking
Blood sports.
yeah. Well, yeah. No, that a lot of that.
We'll be also talking about the 1988 movie Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Marek, have you seen that movie?
No.
Damn it!
I do know Jean-Claude Van Damme voiced Dracula in that one thing on Robot Chicken that one time.
He was also Guile from Street Fighter, but that's...
Wait, he was?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't!
Huh.
Okay, so I know that Zig... I like... At least on my end, to start off, I have been super engrossed in fandom, if you couldn't tell. If you couldn't tell.
Like, for the longest time, we've known you as, like, the fucking Star Wars guy and shit, because you were, like, very much engrossed into, like, that sort of, like, fucking stuff and whatnot, you know what I mean?
I still am, I just on the back seat with that, because, it's, I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes it just ain't fun. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that topic. But I as an individual am a member of multiple different fandoms. If it wasn't obvious, so
Same here, but I've always considered myself more of a casual fan than say like a diehard fanatic or anything like that. You know what I mean?
that actually does have something to do with what I did want to say at one point too.
Yeah.
Because even then. It's like I'll get to that as we get to that. But the point is that like I'm very much, I guess, engrossed in the culture, despite me taking a lot of like back seats when it comes to certain like things, because I do not want to get involved with some fandom stuff, but not out of like any negative connotations. I just don't have the time for it sometimes, so I'd rather just kind of like,
You have like other priorities and all that sort of shit.
yeah, and I like picking through things with a fine-tooth comb and looking at, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think everybody likes looking at a good old car crash every now and then.
Every now and then, but after a while, it's just like, yeah, we see the fucking car crash, just move on at this point and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
And obviously, like I said, when it comes to fandom, people always be bringing up the car crash. Now, to contrast, I know like how Zig said that he's involved, but he's more of casual when it comes to a lot of stuff.
yeah, I don't really get myself engrossed in like a lot of sort of things and shit like that. I'll like look at some fan art and like, probably do like a little like fan thing every now and then, like say when we did the Yu-Gi-Oh audio thing for Newgrounds, the Night in the Woods audio and all that sort of shit. I'll do music for a collab every now and then and shit like that. Heck, I actually did some music for an upcoming one that's probably going to be releasing in November and shit like that, but that's all in good time. That's all in good time.
But yeah, Zig has a different experience than I do. So he's kind of gone into the research angle on this, while I'm approaching this from experience of being in the field.
I wouldn't say, like, I have my own sort of experience with it too and shit like that, but I kind of wanted to go. I first kind of wanted to go into the more historical aspect of it, kind of like get into like the whole like of how this sort of like fandom culture popped up and everything like that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Marek, a very simple question.
Okay.
What do you think was the first instance of like that sort of like fandom culture or that type of phenomenon
Phenomena.
phenomenon and whatnot?
Do.
Phenomena.
I
Do. But yeah.
well, to be honest with you, I've watched I don't remember if it was like down the rabbit hole when that dude was still making videos.
He still makes videos. It just takes a very long time and shit.
Yeah, that's why I've kind of fallen off his like stuff. But I don't remember if it was him or if it was someone else. But was it furries?
No, actually.
Okay.
And it wasn't Star Trek. We are actually going
Really?
way back. Because you want to know what actually started, you know what was actually considered like the OG fandom?
Okay, what was the OG fandom?
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Oh, right! I forgot it! That's kind of ironic, too, considering how big Sherlock, the show, has like a fucking fandom surrounding it.
Yeah, and the whole fucking mega fandom that was Super Hulock, but I digress.
Oh,
So,
oh god!
listen, you're talking to someone who was like fucking, who had like a Tumblr account and was somewhat engrossed in that sort of like fucking community for like a good while. Like, not again, more so casual than just like, okay, let me we'll discuss this a little bit later and shit. But back to my whole fucking.
I gotta know this. I gotta know this juicy detail of Zig's past on Super Hulock.
It's more so just me like me like looking at old cringe compilations at the time and shit like that, and being like,
okay. So it wasn't. You weren't actually.
I was never part of any of this sort of shit and whatnot.
You got me excited. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta hear.
I know about this shit based off of like old cringe comps and just me looking in the watching in the background on the set.
Doing welcome stats.
We'll talk about the Tumblr sexy man thing in a fucking moment and whatnot. But I want to get back to fucking Sherlock Holmes right fucking now and shit.
Because all right, yeah.
So-
Because even I actually do got something to say about the Sherlock Holmes when you kind of come up with that, when you kind of continue. So go on. So yeah, Sherlock Holmes was the first.
Yes, very fucking popular. You know, he had his first published in 1887 with A Study in Scarlet. That's it. But he wouldn't become more popular until his first series of short stories in the Strand magazine and whatnot, beginning with A Scandal in Bohemia in 1891 and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I could believe that was like easily more accessible by like the common people.
Yeah, you know, magazines being more cheaper and widespread and everything like that.
Than a whole fucking book.
Yeah. And again, those stories were immensely popular. But, you know, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wanted to work on other shit. And he was like, you know, he was basically, I want to work on this sort of stuff and not like this fucking, and not more
I think
like
I remember this story.
He
killed off Holmes.
He killed off Holmes in the 1893 story, The Final Problem and whatnot. And there was a massive fucking outcry and whatnot.
So we brought him back to life.
Yeah, like, I was just going to, like, say, like, people wore, like, black armbands, newspapers were fucking writing obituaries and everything like that about...
First retcon.
You say that now! You say that now? But,
the
you know...
first retcon. Oh my god.
Once he brought him back, people will acknowledge that, yeah... After he came back, the fucking stories weren't as great as the original canon and shit, you know what I mean?
My god! This is literally modern day!
Yes! Yes! Time is a fucking circle, Marek! Everything happens all at once!
But if it's a circle, then that means we're gonna wrap around, right?
Yeah, we're gonna wrap around it.
So I'm finally gonna get to meet, fucking...
Go on.
I'm finally gonna get to meet Leonardo da Vinci.
In another place and another time, Marek. Maybe in Da Vinci's home planet, if Futurama is to be believed. But yeah, no, like, they actually did talk about, like, the whole sort of, like, retcons and inconsistencies that came up in these later things and whatnot.
Oh my god, this is just fucking, like, modern day fandom all over again.
Oh yeah, no, like, again, time is a fucking circle and shit.
People could never stop fighting about entertainment and stupid shit sometimes. Jeez.
Tell me about it. So, you know, groups formed and everything like that. There's the New York City-based organization, the Baker Street Irregulars, that came up in 1934. And then there's also the Sherlock Holmes Society out in London that also formed around the same time. And hell, there was even like fanfic based on like the whole stuff dating back from 1897 and all that sort of shit too, you know, with like...
There were fanfics in 1897?
Yes, but they were mostly called pastiches and everything like that, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I actually do have a few right here and shit like that. The Professor Moriarty series by Michael Kurland. Stephen King wrote one called The Doctor's Case. The Last Sherlock Holmes story by Michael Dibdin, where he's involved with the fucking Jack the Ripper killings and all that sort of shit.
It's funny you say that because real quick. So one of the few anime I like is Detective Conan / Case Closed, right?
Yeah.
I always forget that that Baker Street is a thing in Sherlock Holmes, right? So while you were saying that, I just came to me like, oh, Baker Town, Baker Street, Baker Town and Baker Street, and I'm like, fucking go, like the writer of that freaking shit. I'm like, you ass. But on top of that, it's very like Case Closed / Detective Conan, whatever you want to call it, is very intertwined with like the Holmes stuff. Like the main character is a fucking Holmes fan. That's why he's a detective.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly from like the first, like the reason why he even plays like soccer is to like hone his fucking like leg strength or whatever. Because to quote him from the first episode, oh, even Holmes fenced.
It's true.
And it's like, how what was it? How you said, aside from like the Baker shit, you said that he was involved in like Jack the Ripper, yeah, in like a fan pastiche.
Yeah, in a published pastiche, if you will.
It's funny you say that because one of the fucking Case Closed movies that got dubbed ages ago was The Phantom of Baker Street, where they go in a VR simulation, right?
Uh-huh.
And so long story short, this is like a VR thing. There's air quotes multiple games to play that you go into, and one of them just so happened to be a Sherlock Holmes themed one where they have to track down Jack the Ripper. And what was it? It like in that specific thing, like Jack the Ripper is like an agent of Moriarty, but he's gone like rogue. He's half rogue, half not. Like he still listens to orders, but he does shit of his own accord, right?
Right, yeah.
And honestly, the movie is very like action packed because there's like a real crime that's intertwined with the in-game crime. And there's an AI, like it's a nutshell movie. But what was it? There was a fucking thing. What was it? There was a whole segment that involved a bomb and then somebody jumping out of a train or something like that. Crazy shit. But I you know what I mean. Like I said, just as soon as you brought that up, like the Baker Town, the Baker Street, and then Jack the Ripper, I was like, oh yeah, like damn, there's even more connections with like fucking Case Closed / Detective Conan that I never even noticed until like we're just sitting here having this discussion about fandom.
Yeah, if you want to even go even broader than that, you know, the sci-fi fandom has been around since the 1930s and whatnot, and ever since
fair.
And ever since like 1939, there's always been the World Science Fiction Convention and shit.
And again, we're gonna get back to this a little bit later. I think like I don't think that specifically. Maybe back then it was like niche enough that it could be considered a fandom, but that shit definitely grew into a community with like fandoms that are part of that type of community.
Well, yeah, there is subcultures within subcultures and all that sort of stuff and shit. I would say by the late 60s, early 70s, with like say franchises like, you know, Star Trek, Star Wars. Hell, even with like, you know, bands and everything like that, with like, say, you know, Deadheads for the Grateful Dead, Beatlemania from like 64 to 66 and all that sort of shit too. You know what I mean?
Sports stuff is a fandom all into its own.
Oh my god, don't even get me started on that.
So Zig, are the Mets gonna win another World Series?
Marek, too soon as of this recording, man. It's already the fucking Dodgers versus the Yankees and shit. And I'm just like, listen, I'm more so glad that they made it to the fucking playoffs than anything, to be quite honest with you.
Didn't I joke about the Dodgers too? And then
you were being like, yeah, I can't wait I can't wait to watch the Dodgers. You know, they were named after a guy, a baseball legend named Roy Dodger or some shit like that. And just like,
No, I don't even remember what I said.
dude, I was playing Quake 4 when you were doing all that sort of shit, so I was like kind of tuned out and all that sort of shit too.
I was trying to be like, I got replaced by a replicant or something like that, and you were like, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And, you know, and then from there, regarding, like, you know, more stuff became more mainstream and shit. Little fucking niches propped up on their own thanks to the internet and all that sort of shit. Like, hell, even going back when you were talking about the furry stuff, that in of itself actually originated from a sci-fi convention in 1980 and shit, right?
I mean, and the irony, well, I don't want to say irony.
Frederick Newson does a really good fucking video about the furry fandom on the Down Rabbit Hole, which I will fucking link in the description and shit. And I'll also link to the article regarding like Sherlock Holmes and the whole sort of thing about like, you know, fandom and everything like that too, if anybody wants to read it on their own time and everything like that.
I should look into that because I do like a good mystery.
There is a really good Wired article about like Sherlock Holmes and how, like, you know, and how it basically brought on like,
I like
these
my
obsessed...
Scooby-Doos.
Yeah.
But
and how it basically brought on like basically the founding was basically the building blocks of like modern fandom culture and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
because again, I'm surprised by how much it sounds like, you know, current day. As soon as you said like as soon as we got to like the first retcon, I'm like, damn, we just spitting and hitting like everything nowadays, where everything's a fucking retcon.
Again, I'm only saying what I'm reading here and shit. I'm only bringing this up because this is basically the truth of it and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I did want to interject because when you said like that the furry fandom kind of came from, because I forgot I remember watching the video and that's why I thought maybe that was like the first big thing. But the irony, which I don't want to say the word irony, I think it's like a little bit too harsh. It's a little more hostile than I don't want to be fucking like mean about it. I say it out of like, it's kind of interesting. I should say it's kind of interesting that it came from sci-fi, considering that in some cases there's a lot of like, I guess that type of stuff that we see in a lot of like furry things in sci-fi. Not to say like, you know, you see like furries running around with, like laser guns and crap.
You know,
like,
this kind of reminds me of Osamu Tezuka, you know, passed away and all that sort of shit, right? They actually did go through like his personal artwork and shit, and they found like folders of like old furry artwork that he did and everything like that.
This is gonna be like a weird thing to bring up because I've just been, I've trekked around the internet enough. I see a lot of strange things. So I've seen into like some stuff that like furries like make. A lot of it is very sci-fi adjacent. A lot of others is very like horror adjacent.
Or hell, even like fantasy adjacent too and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, look at Elder Scrolls, like fucking, you know, there's Khajiit and
we have fucking cat people and lizard folk and everything like that.
And don't forget there's also fox people, but we don't really see them in the games.
Right.
I think, well, there was a couple of, I don't want to, well, even Minotaur technically too. But we're not really talking about...
I think there's a mod for Skyrim regarding like the fox people and all that sort of shit, but
I had it.
Right.
But that's specific. Look, that's neither here nor there. The point of the matter is that like the some of the stuff that involves like the furry stuff is with the sci-fi, and I get it. I guess that sort of brings it into, I guess, like the discourse. Where did you want to take this? Because
we're gonna start like with our own fucking experiences with fandom and all that sort of shit.
Welcome to the segment where I talk for a fucking hour and a half about everything.
Nah, if I have anything to say.
Well, all right. Maybe all right. You know what? I'll start with this one, I guess, because you were the main attraction for our introduction there.
Yeah. So Merrick, the floor is yours.
Hi everybody. I'm Marek Ishtar. Welcome to my TED Talk about my experience in fandoms. I was, as far as I can go back and remember, I have been a huge Star Wars fan. I don't know, like, I just remember, like, going into Blockbuster Video and we pulled out well, I went down the aisles and I saw the videotape for Phantom Menace and I said, I can say as an adult, all right, let's give this a go. As a kid, I'm like, ooh, what's this? You bring it home, you watch it, I could not stop watching it. I remember being up in the middle of the night, like watching like the Naboo escape, like when they were escaping from Naboo and shit, and I'm like unable to be put to sleep and crap. I just have like I have like fond memories of seeing Attack of the Clones on like VHS 2. Our neighbor lent us her copies of 4, 5, and 6, which I again remember watching in the middle of the night, laying on a blanket in the living room and like trying to piece together and understand what's going on and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And I do vaguely remember being afraid of Jabba the Hutt and like Jabba's palace because like all the heroes were in like dark shit. I think that might be the origin of where I sort of don't like some low points in stories, I guess. But that's besides the point. I don't want to get into like childhood trauma from there. But the point is that like I was a huge fan of Star Wars, so everything that I kind of got my grubby little hands on was Star Wars related or near related to Star Wars, or I would try to fit it into Star Wars or something like that. Like what was it? Like I think Jimmy Neutron. Hell, I know I played like around with like I played around with like a little Jimmy Neutron like Burger King toy, I think it was, Rocket, with like my Star Wars stuff. I put like the GI Joes with the Star Wars stuff and everything like that.
Yeah.
And that was me. So the thing is though, right? I think well, this is definitely not an I think this is definitely the thing that like molded me into the person. Like, 'cause I would always play the video games and stuff like that, right? So one magical day, I go into a BJ's with my somebody, I don't know who. And while in there, I find this huge ass hardcover book, The Essential Guide to Characters, Technology, and Vehicles.
So basically, the encyclopedia of Star Wars and all that sort of shit.
The expanded universe, all the expanded universe shit, and I couldn't necessarily read all the text, but you know I would read the character names. I'd look at the pictures, like I'd be like, you know, I can't I'd be like, oh, who's this? Jason Solo, Jane, you know, like I'd be like I'd be like in complete shock, disbelief, like who are all these people? These are so cool, like extended family, that type of shit.
Yeah.
It fed my and the big thing that made me connected was because I played the Starfighter games. I knew the character Nim. He had his own page in that book, and I'm like, oh, you know, like because well, like I was like, you know, happy about that,
Mm-hmm.
and it led me to discover like a whole bunch of other shit. So that was like my first big steps into like the bigger Star Wars fandom, and I never had like the internet really as a kid, right?
Yeah,
So
I know you've told this story before. I'm just like,
it was, you know, when we got older, when I got a little like I say around the internet was more normalized around like I want to say maybe 6th grade, middle school. I don't remember. It's very fuzzy.
yeah,
Can't really remember.
I would honestly, I would say it's more chalked up to like sounds more so like your boomer parents just never really had like the internet and whatnot because again they had TV and newspapers and like radio and all that sort of shit. So it's like
Slow to
that's my
adopt new
information there and shit. Even
slow
though
to adopt new stuff.
I'll say this, my parents, more so my mom than my dad, were early adopters of the internet and all that sort of stuff. Mainly for my mom, who worked on databases for like hospitals and all that sort of shit. That was basically like her bread and butter. She would need to connect to a server and everything like that. You know what I mean? Sitting on her lap and just looking up photos of like Thomas the Tank Engine and like fucking Disney shit on like Disney.com and all that sort of stuff when I was like a wee young little baby Zig and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Hell, early childhood memories could make a fucking video all into itself. Well, a podcast episode all into itself, I should say.
Yeah.
But again, I digress on that. So, sort of continuing off of that shit, right? So, like, you know, I mean, I never really was exposed to the online, like, any, like, you know, the wider Star Wars fandom.
Right.
It was just me, my book, my action figures, my games, and the 2003 Clone Wars TV show. So because, and I also, I got like other books and chat. I was getting into it. You know what I mean? Like I was going into it and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
It's just that big book. I still have it, by the way. It's in my room.
I think I did see it when
I lost the paper cover though for it, so it's still like a hardcover. It's a little beat up, but it's so fucking.
yeah, I think I've seen it around there and whatnot when we were just helping out with some shit. You know what I
That's
mean?
my guide to the infinity there. But the thing is though, right, too, when we did adopt the internet finally in my household, again, I never really got into the Star Wars like subculture, right?
Right, yeah.
Nobody really, like, I couldn't really figure out much that type of shit because slow to get to the stuff or whatever, right? But I want to say I was in maybe middle school by the time that I was really like using the internet and like actually like getting to understand things, right? And by the time that I managed to find Star Wars discourse, right? So
Right.
I pretty much loved everything Star Wars, like the books, the like games, the freaking like toys. I liked all the shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time that I managed to actually discover the fandom like in its whole, I'm gonna be honest and just flat out say I felt like the only sane person in an asylum.
Okay.
The reason why I say that is because, so like I grew up, you got to respect your elders, that type of shit, right? That's what
Uh-huh.
I don't evoke that onto people. I don't really practice that I anymore because as I grow older, I do things based on mutual respect, that type of shit. But like when you see grown adult, so imagine being my age as a kid, right? Like middle school age, maybe sixth grade, somewhere in that area, somewhere in that ballpark. Imagine a kid that age, right? And you see grown ass old men with old men, like white graying hair, screaming about the Star Wars special editions and other stuff. Like that made me go, I'm like, okay, there's something not right here. These people are like cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo.
Okay.
I really, really never got involved. I just liked my shit and I just browsed Wikipedia and whatnot, right?
Uh-huh.
I want to continue into the modern day, but if I do that, it's gonna get like extremely. We'll get to that later when we talk about like not the bad side, but like the fandom shit that's like really fucking stupid and annoying, I guess.
Like the flame wars and all that sort of shit and like which is considered like the fucking I guess
Yeah, nah, like it's not really like a good thing because basically my evolution as a Star Wars fan goes as such. I liked it a lot as a kid. I still love it a lot.
mm-hmm.
Now, I prefer the expanded universe stuff to what the current owners are putting out, Disney. And that's just me. I got no problem if others enjoy it. The only time I have a problem is when people either just bash the old stuff without understanding what they're talking about, and when people are so extremely fanatical about the new stuff that they're, going crazy. Because I just don't like when fucking people go crazy about it. It's just like, you're being crazy. Calm down. This ain't your life. You know what? Like, well, this hopefully shouldn't be your life.
Yeah.
And I get like fandom stuff runs deep in that type of shit. So it's fair. But like right now in my house, I am surrounded by my shit.
Yeah, you have
I
a whole
have
figure collection and whatnot, which you've
and
done multiple videos on over the years.
and it's not just like Star Wars. I'm just gonna straight up spit facts here, right? I
Okay.
only I only talked about the Star Wars fandom thing here real quick because that's like the easiest way of explaining my story of getting into fandom shit. Because over the years I'd slowly expand out to different things. Like I was into and still into Adventure Time, fucking Transformers as a kid, and then I'm still am now. Sonic the Hedgehog, I was a closet brony in fucking high school and like late middle school. I think is when the show came out. I forgot when I was like watching it. Again. A lot of that old memories are
I
fuzzy.
know Friendship is Magic came out around 2010 and all that sort of stuff.
I
Like,
forgot when, because I think I graduated in 2015 from high school. Yeah, I was then that means I was a closet brony since fucking middle school. Now I'm extremely open about it, and it's honestly my main representation.
you do use the Pony VTuber model more so than the Skeletober one and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
And what do I have on my ass? A lightsaber, and I'm wearing a Boba Fett hat. You know what? It's always been there. I'm looking at the back of my other computer. I see like all my fandom stuff. I see like MLP shit. I see Sonic shit. I see Metroid stuff. I see Resident Evil. I see, and all of this stuff just comes into like points in your life, and you never think that you never really think about it until you think about it. The day that I guess made me a Mario fan. The day I kind of like it made me a Mario fan, even though I played like the Super Nintendo when I was younger too. It was in grade school. I forgot, and then got into it, like really into it, out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Just a switch turned on in my head, and that was it.
For me, it was basically the Super Mario Advance version of Super Mario World that basically was my gateway drug into Mario and all that sort of shit.
I had those games too, and I wasn't like super into it, but Switch turned on in my head at some point in my grade school, and I was Mario, 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 along with everything else.
Oh man, that was like basically first and second grade for me and shit. I was obsessed with fucking Mario. Hell, I've actually went to a few block parties dressed up as fucking Mario and whatnot, you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure I embarrassed my cousins and all that sort of shit, or maybe they don't even fucking care and whatnot. It was just like,
I mean, they shouldn't.
It's
they
something.
Shouldn't.
It's something to just like look back and laugh at and shit. And I'm
now I'm just imagining.
I kind of like.
I'm imagining Tiny Zig. I'm just imagining Tiny Zig in his Mario suit dancing to like the fucking da na 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 na. Yeah. I just can't get the fucking image out of my head though of like.
I know I annoyed a few teachers.
I sit down when I pee.
Actually, I do have a funny story regarding like Mario and just like Nintendo and all that sort of shit, right? So back in like say the second grade or so, when they announced Mario Party 5 and all that sort of shit, I was just like, oh boy, I can't wait for this to come out and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Was this the day that Zig felt betrayed by Mario?
No, I never felt betrayed by Mario. Anyway, just to be like, oh, I can't wait for this to come out. You know what I would fucking do and whatnot?
What did you do?
I used to call up the goddamn 1-800 number for like the Nintendo customer service and everything like that, right?
You bothered those poor people.
I bothered them being like, hi, my name's Gert Ziegler and I'm 8 years old and I really love Mario. Can you tell me about Mario Party 5 and when that's coming out? This happened like on a week by week fucking basis and shit. To the point where they were like, hey, can you get your mom on the phone, please? Okay. And then they were just like, please never fucking call again.
Fucking really?
I wouldn't be fucking telling the story if it wasn't the goddamn truth.
Oh my god.
I can call up my mom right now and be like, hey, do you remember when I used to fucking call the Nintendo hotline every fucking day from like until Mario Party 5 came out, and how we went to like KB Toys and Target just to find the damn thing?
What was you little Muriel'd them?
Yeah.
You little Muriel'd them, Zig.
I know. Listen,
tell
if
me
there's
a story.
anybody...
I want an Easter egg. I want an Easter egg.
More macaroni.
Less cheese. Too much macaroni. I hate macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Now, a lot of my fandom stuff, though, right? Is a lot of my fandom stuff is very open. You know what I mean? I don't really get involved in the community because I'm gonna be honest with you. I like discussing stuff, but I like discussing stuff, but like I don't like going in circles with discourse, and that tends to be like the case with a lot of like stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly just kind of like keep to myself, or if I have something to say, I make a video about it, because why the hell not? I'll shout to the aether if I have to about something that's on my
You'll
mind.
scream into the void and everything like that.
Yeah, but like it's not a, because like I said, it's not a all my stuff. Like I said, you really don't sometimes you don't consider yourself a fan of something until it just kind of like crops up back into your life as something like, yeah, I had fun with that, and I'm gonna continue having fun with that too, I should say.
Yeah.
Because it's like with me, like something like Sly Cooper, because I'm staring at my replica of the Thievius Raccoonus. Even like I said, discussing this makes me think about like what makes me a fan of it and whatnot, or like why am I a fan of this thing? Because I got like I said, it's deep. It's like deeper. It brings me enjoyment, and if I'm a fan of it, like I was gonna say to you earlier too, like once a fan, always a fan. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you're just a fan of something, technicality and definition, you are a part of the fandom.
Well, yeah, I'm not denying that any sort of way whatsoever and shit.
Yeah.
Again, I
It's,
don't really. Again,
like
I'm kind of like you when it comes to like say discourse and all that sort of shit, where I will keep to myself about anything like that, or I'll talk to somebody else about like I'll probably like just talk to somebody else about it, and just give my whole fucking thoughts about like that sort of shit, and just leave it from there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
For the most part, all of this shit is just like I have no fucking weight towards this anything or the other and whatnot. That's mainly like why I've kind of like.
Again,
Me,
we'll get to that later with the flame wars and shit, because
yeah, no. For me, it's just like I'm the guy who just stands by the sidelines, grabbing a bag of popcorn and just watching this sort of shit go down and whatnot. You know what I mean? So,
again, you doing that, essentially led to this podcast actually happening. So
well,
congratulations.
yeah. uh,
But yeah, like the point is that like it makes me happy, and that's that's like the fair bit about it.
yeah, no. If something makes you happy and you want to be part of the camaraderie and all that sort of shit, then just fucking do it and all that sort of shit. Like
Hell, I'm friends with a bunch of people from like different fandoms that are intertwined essentially.
Yeah.
So it in of itself is like a whole it's like a whole bigger ethos essentially. Like that being said, my fandom experiences really do just kind of like range from like, oh, I went, I go to conventions, I
Uh-huh.
hang out with people, I chat with people about stuff sometimes, or I do like the whole like, oh, what if one thing from this thing I like fought other thing from this other thing I like. Yeah, that's about it. I just have like a generally like regular experience. Like I don't go out looking for fights. I don't go out like looking for like witch hunts. But a lot of that type of stuff just ends up finding me anyway. So it is in and of itself like a whole, it's like a whole other thing. I have a funny thing I do want to bring up, but I'll bring that up when we get to like the culture, like the community part of things, I guess.
All right. Like.
Because it's just a funny saying. It's just a funny saying that I told I was chatting with a friend of mine who's a furry, and I brought it up with them, and I also brought it up with another mutual of ours who's also a furry too. So
Uh-huh.
about the same thing. So I'll get to that. It's just something like minutely related to like my Star Wars roots, I should say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So like just to like sort of and other than that, of the few things that like my fandom stuff has made me do, minutely Star Wars related in general, I, out of spite for Marvel, because I thought that they were gonna release like the whole thing, but they didn't, which made me very angry.
Merrick
Out of
angry,
complete
Merrick mad. Ah.
out of complete spite, I hunted down 10, I think 10 or 9. I hunted down about like 9 or 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Trade paperback comic like comic books so I could finish Star Wars Legacy and its sequel Legacy 2, which was the last Star Wars comics that came out before the Disney buyout. And I do gotta say, I love that ending. It is very Star Warsy, and like thinking about it just makes me go like, yes.
Like, I don't mean this in like any sort of like mean way or anything like that, but what were you trying to fucking prove by tracking down those old ass comics or some shit like that?
Oh! I did it out of spite of like fucking Marvel, because I said like, you say you released the whole thing in 2 volumes. They didn't. They stopped after like a certain issue. And I was like, are you kidding me? This isn't the whole Legacy comic. What the fuck? So that I wanted to finish the story bed, so I went out to just, out of spite and anger, I said like, I'm gonna fucking finish this if it's the last thing I do. And I went out and bought all the freaking, spent a lot of money on that, by the way. It was worth it though. It's like I said, it's a good story.
Okay, cool.
I'm not disappointed. I'm just annoyed that like you do not advertise that and then don't give the whole story.
I see. Yeah.
Sorry, just me being petty for a second. So Zig, so what's your fandom story? Like, what's your experience?
Again, I'd say I'm more so just like a casual fan of just like, a lot of shit and whatnot. Like, mainly.
A casual fan still has,
Yeah, I know.
You talked about your Mario phase.
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of like stuff that I would say I was obsessed with when I was like, that did like kind of like fucking cross paths with each other or some shit like that. Or like, I would say like, there was like a lot of stuff I was obsessed with along with a lot of other stuff and shit. When I was like really fucking young, I was like really into like fucking Superman, Digimon, and Mario. Those were like the first 3 things of where I was just like, fully engrossed in that sort of shit and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Zig, I feel like you still have a deep thing with Digimon though.
Honestly, I still have a fucking deep thing with like all of those and whatnot. Like, like back in like.
There you go. That's interesting.
Like,
go
dude,
on,
keep
going.
Okay, I know some of the people in the podcast aren't going to see this and whatnot, but I'm just gonna show this to Marek real quick. But I wanted to.
Okay, let me open up the. Let me just make sure I'm like viewing your thing on.
Yeah.
I know that I was sending a bunch of Transformers related shit to Zig too earlier.
Yeah, because I've actually had this in my fucking collection ever since I was like a kid and everything like that. So I'm just gonna turn my webcam on, and so.
For fans of the podcast, I'm just saying Gerwalk Optimus Prime. If you know, you know.
Okay, cool. So, anyway, that's what I was saying. I've actually had this. This is actually something that I've had in my collection ever since I was a fucking kid and whatnot. But
okay.
I don't know. Is it gonna focus?
Ooh.
So this right here is a pewter statue of Superman #1 from 1939 and everything like that.
Oh shit, that's cool.
I think DC did this with Comic Book Champions, as it says in the back and whatnot, and this was part of their premiere series and all that sort of shit. And like on the back you had, come on, focus camera, focus there. I know you can't really read it on the back and everything like that, but it does say like, it gives like the publication date. Man of Tomorrow took the nation by storm after his introduction earlier in the year with Action Comics #1. Says that it's created by Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel and whatnot. And they also show off, like, this is from the Golden Age. They have one for the Joker for, like, the Silver Age comics. And they do have Batman for, like, the Modern Age. Because, Dark Knight and all that sort of shit was very fucking popular.
I like that they gave
you know what I mean?
I like that they gave the Joker a statue.
I know, it's crazy. You would think that they would give it to, say, like Wonder Woman or like, someone else representing the Silver Age and everything like that. But no, I've had this for like
especially
the longest.
Considering again, that's like 2 Batman characters.
I've had this for the longest time and everything like that. And even though I'm not really I don't really read the comics all that much, but I still have my copy of.
Fair.
I still have my copy of Superman Forever #1 from 1998. Really good. Alex Ross did the cover art for that shit, and his stuff is like some of the greatest fucking shit I've ever seen in my fucking life and whatnot. if you ever seen his stuff, you'll see it you'll recognize it for how like realistic that shit can be and everything like that. You know what I mean?
And
So,
I'll be the first to say,
Superman still holds a dear place in my heart. I'll still watch like the old 1940s cartoons. I'll still watch the one from like the old cartoon from like the 90s and everything like that. Hell, I've been rewatching the old Justice League cartoons off of fucking Netflix and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying?
look, I'll be the first to say, like, you don't have to extremely be into like the main associated media of like the property to be a fan of it. Like, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, but it's not the comics that made me that's not the comics that made me the Spider-Man fan. No.
Was it the
the
Sam
fuck
Raimi movies or?
Yes, big time. And I will forever defend Spider-Man 3 for what it's worth, because I still love that movie.
It's honestly not that bad of a fucking movie, all things
Yeah.
considered and shit. And again, I don't really want to knock the fucking Amazing Spider-Man movies and whatnot too, because I feel like those can have their moments and all that sort of shit. You know what I'm saying?
My dislike of those, like, were more or less like a gut reaction of, we're getting this again. We already had the origin story. Why do we need, you get that deal on that. That, and like one other detail, this is post movies coming out, because that was an era specifically in a lot of Spider-Man shit where Oscorp was behind everything. Nothing could be its own independent thing. Everything's Oscorp's fault. And I only say that out of, like, I don't like when stories make everything so convenient. But that's besides the point. Like, that's getting into fandom discourse type. That's getting into the fandom discourse level shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you don't have to be an enjoyer of like the main associated material in order to be a fan of something.
I mean, it's nice to know about it and shit like that too, just to give yourself some fucking context behind, like, a lot of the fucking things and shit. You know what I mean?
Like, I love Booster Gold, but I've only read like 5 Booster Gold comics. So like I mainly know him from Justice League and what was that one show? The Batman show where it's kind of like campy, but it's animated. Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the name.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so like that's completely fair. But yeah, you were saying, like, you're a huge Superman fan. And go on, keep going. Sorry, I don't want to completely turn this.
So that was like my biggest fucking obsession. Like, I had that costume since like kindergarten and whatnot, and I've had that and I've kept that until I was fully grown out of it, like by 4th or 5th grade or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
Again, talk about being a big fan of something again. I went as Django Fett for Halloween twice.
I went as Mario twice for Halloween and shit. Like, I kind of did like the whole like Smash Brothers like cloning sort of way of doing it. One year I was Mario, the next year I was Dr. Mario and shit like that. You know what I mean?
No, Zig.
I had the.
You gotta be Sig Mario next Halloween.
Who?
Sig Mario.
What the fuck is Sig Mario?
Sig Mario is Mario's secret brother who killed the Koopa God at the beginning of time. He's looking up Sig Mario.
Oh my god, what fresh hell is this? I was fine with like fucking pretzel and sponge and all that sort of shit from like, Vinny's goddamn
What about Pietro? What about Pietro from the Mario Brothers Super Show?
I don't
the third Mario brother with the orange cap, and he wore a suit. He wore like a bowler suit or something like that. A boiler suit. I think his name was Pietro.
It was Pietro, but it turns out that guy was a fucking like, he was the fraud the whole time and all that sort of shit. I remember that from the Super Show and all that sort of stuff too.
Yeah, fucking look at him.
I know.
Pietro Mario. So yeah. So sorry, you were. So you were the Superman, Mario, and Digimon.
And my gateway drug into that was the Digimon movie and all that sort of shit. Like, I think my mom got it at like a CVS and whatnot. Was like, oh, this is kind of like Pokemon. I'm pretty sure little baby Zig would like this and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Fair.
I was 4. I watched the hell out of that tape until like it started to like wear down and all that sort of shit.
Even the
Because
Angela Anaconda short at the beginning.
I'll be honest, yeah, the short that caused a kid's parents to divorce and
I'm
whatnot.
so sorry. I'm so sorry for interjecting during your stories, but during your stories. But I always find like I don't know. You have a funny way of like giving me a moment to just like like Sigmario, Pietro, the Angela Anaconda short at the start of the Digimon movie.
Yeah. So I think I did watch a little bit of some of the episodes in the original run and all that sort of shit back when it was on Fox Kids and whatnot
Yeah.
too. And I do remember
Oh.
like channel surfing one time when I was on vacation and shit, and a little bit of Tamers came on, and then my dad fucking changed the channel and whatnot. I think he thought it was like too violent or some shit like that too. You know what I mean?
I
But
mean, fair. Like there is Digimon with guns for hands. I got one behind me.
the scene wasn't even that like fucking.
I know. I'm fucking around with
I
that.
know, I know. Like, but I
Parents
digress.
watching.
More by and by, and just like it was just like one of those things where it's just like I would kind of fall out, like not out of like anger or like spite or anything like that. It was just like something else would like get my attention too and whatnot. Like for me, like it would be that, and then I'll move on to another thing like Mario. I was sort of obsessed with like the fucking Beatles and all that shit when I was a kid. And then for me, like in high school, it would later become like punk and the Ramones and all that sort of stuff, like all that new wavy kind of stuff too, and all that sort of shit. And yeah, like my sort of discourse on that, like I've never really gotten into like sort of like flame wars or all that sort of shit. Like everything else would be like I would hear about it in a video and whatnot. Like say when Jello Apocalypse did like the whole Welcome to Tumblr sort of video and everything like that. And the whole fucking firestorm that brought on and shit.
I mean, Jello Apocalypse kind of like has a lot of firestorms, but I get you.
Yeah, no, like that's a whole fucking thing on in of itself, and I'm not really like I don't really want to discuss deeper into that or anything more so because
Super Hulock, baby.
yeah, the Super Hulock where it's just like you have like this whole amalgamation of like Doctor Who, Sherlock, and Supernatural and all that sort of shit, and
I forgot that was the third part of it. I honestly
I've watched a little bit of Supernatural, and I'm like, how do people get into this shit? You know what I mean?
I mean, didn't it have like an episode about like Scooby Doo or something?
Yeah, they did have a Scooby Doo special and all that sort of shit.
What
hasn't had
totally...
a fucking like a Scooby Doo like sort of like meets this and whatnot? Like even back in like the day, you had like the new Scooby Doo mysteries where they would run into like say fucking Sonny and Cher, or the Three Stooges, or like the fucking Addams Family, or any of that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
And I don't know why I'm thinking of like the Robotic Stooges, but
yeah. So, like most of the stuff I've learned through like basically cultural osmosis, or like me just standing by the sidelines and seeing all this go down and like fucking go down in real time or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's totally how.
Super Hulock was a thing that I saw. Mostly people who were like who would make jokes about less than fucking like Tumblr's like sort of reputation, where it was like me logging into Tumblr. You have like Frank Reynolds being like, okay, into the toilet I go. That sort of shit. And then, like, somebody actually replied to that and being like, yeah, it may be weird to be traveling through a toilet, but on the other side, you'll find a nice place with, like, diverse individuals and like-minded people and all that sort of shit. And then somebody responded with, what the shit are you talking about and whatnot, with, like, a fucking gif of, like, Danny DeVito, like, Frank Reynolds saying that and all that sort of shit, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, yeah.
At least they're self-aware.
Oh yeah, no. There were people who were self-aware about this site is like fucking. There's a lot of like fucking stupid ass shit on this site and shit. We wouldn't know what we didn't know about what would go on, what would later happen, like around 2017, 2018. It feels like a fucking flash in the pan or just like a distant memory now and whatever. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of like fandom culture stuff that stems from Tumblr. Like I know like Steven Universe fans were there, and like
Yeah.
fucking the Onceler. Like
Listen, there's a whole fucking Wikipedia page about Tumblr sexy man and all that sort of shit.
I'm gonna be honest.
There
I
was a
feel
fucking
like
tournament going on around the same day Queen Elizabeth died and whatnot. You know what I mean?
oh my god.
It was Sans versus the fucking one motherfucker from Mob Psycho 100 Region or whatever the fuck his name is. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
Really?
yeah, it was like, who is the ultimate Tumblr sexy man? And fucking Sans Undertale won and shit.
Of course he does. Another minor like fandom related annoyance. Before another minor fandom related annoyance involving Sans. No, Sans is not strong. Physically, he's not. He has strong magical he's got strong magical attacks and other like crazy techniques, but he himself is not strong. He's only hard to kill because outside of his attacks, he literally dodges every single thing you throw at him. It takes one hit to kill him because he has 1 HP. I'm so annoyed at people like making him a freaking god when he's not a fucking god. That's just like the only annoying thing related to like Deltarune and Undertale is he has strong powers, yes, but he himself is not strong. He goes down in a hit. It just takes a lot before you're able to actually fucking hit him. And hell, he takes a fucking nap and falls asleep too. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's besides the point. I like Sans as a character. I don't like what the internet did to him. No, because it's annoying. Like, all right,
I get it. It can be really fucking annoying and shit. Where it's just like
that's a deep thing. Again, I don't have a problem when people like have fun with it. I have fun with it too sometimes, but like on a daily basis, it's like, haha, it was funny like maybe twice, but then it's like, ugh. Again, you know what I mean? And every now and then I have like a good laugh about it. What was it? I think back to like a this thing called like Cartoon Fight Club I watched once where it was Bill Cipher versus Sans.
This sounds like one of those like death battle-esque type of
It is, and it was hell.
Of course it is.
Like what was it? They had like a 3D animation of Sans and like Bill Cipher, and Bill Cipher did this like weird fucking dance. I'm like, what is this crap? I watched the whole thing. And my big reaction was fucking like Krusty with the cigarette. What the hell was that? Like I get it. People I want people to have their fun. I let people have their fun. That being said, though, I think we can now talk about like how like the growth of these things sometimes can like constitute a the fandom like sort of transgresses like the fandom and becomes a community. Yeah.
I mean,
With a bunch of other like, you know, subcultures and fandoms beneath those like communities.
I guess like these usually
think of it like a Venn diagram essentially.
Okay, like please enlighten me. Like what are you fucking?
Well, how you said with like the sci-fi fandom, right? Like originally it was just general sci-fi.
Yeah.
But then like it grows so big, like the bubble grows so big that, you know, in between the like inside of the bubble is where Star Trek appears, Star Wars. I guess you could throw Futurama in there because there's like a lot of dedicated Futurama fans. Firefly, Mass Effect, and then like, you know, then there's like the fantasy bubble, the fantasy fandom, and then it grows so big. There's Lord of the Rings, Elder Scrolls, Game of Thrones, Disenchantment, again another another Matt Groening show. It shows you how much I know about stuff. But Aragon, I guess too. You get what I'm saying, right? Like the generalization grows, and then there's like I said, there's subcultures in between. Like you can like bronies could be literally fit in between like those two, and it could be put in like any bubble pretty much. Like that's what I'm talking about, right? And then like other stuff like horror horror can like fit in fantasy and sci-fi. Cause like you have like Mars Attacks, The Thing, Aliens. Well, all the Alien movies technically could fit under the horror sci-fi shit.
I think I see where you're coming from and shit. Like, where it's like,
Because you don't consider like furries a fandom. It's a community rather than that. And like the furries can be in pretty much any fandom afterwards.
Yeah, I get that.
Because it started as a fandom and then it expanded to a community. That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, the thing is, I don't really fucking. I don't think there's a distinct line between fandom and community. I think you can interchange the either.
I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there is.
But you were just saying like oh, this involves more into a fandom from like community and all that sort of shit. Like
that's no, like what I'm saying that like the more general evolves into a community. All right, the more generalized fandom stuff like sci-fi, fantasy, like sports, I guess. Like you get what I'm saying, right? Like,
well, yeah, sports is more so just like the whole like fucking. But that's more of a mainstream sort of. That's more so of a mainstream sort of thing where it's like you have people who are like fans of like this, and then you just have and then you have your like super fans and all that sort of stuff, like the Seven Line Army regarding the Mets and all that sort of shit. I know there's like probably other more that I just don't really know about, but but the only reason why I'm bringing up the Seven Line Army is because that's basically the huge group of super fans that I know of, and I get their fucking emails like almost every fucking day and shit regarding that.
But I only bring that up again as a generalization because like when things first start out and people like way back when, like how you said back in like the 1800s, there was a fandom around Sherlock Holmes specifically, right?
Well, yeah, he was a huge cultural phenomenon and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you brought up the idea of like, oh, there was a sci-fi fandom. So
there's still
my
that
thinking,
sort of fandom and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
No, my thinking on that is it starts off as a general sci-fi fandom because there's not that much of it. Because when it's first starting out, it's just a lot of like various different like science fiction-esque stories and crap. No real like interlocking like series of stories until like stuff goes on. Like I said, that's where you have like your Star Wars, your Star Treks, and like everything else in between. So what I'm saying is the general fandom expands to a community, and then all of like the interlocking stories like Star Wars and Star Trek are the fandoms that brew up inside the community.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. He made the discovery, everybody.
Oh, fuck off.
Oh, come on, Zig. I'm fucking with you.
I know.
So like that's what I mean, like, because you can be, like I said, with the like furry fandom too, it started off as a fandom and then it just expanded to a community to the point where like furries can essentially be in any fandom from there. It's a community, and it's a community. And that's what I said, like use a Venn diagram as like an example. I wish we had like a visual aid here because I could literally just draw like a Venn diagram of stuff.
I'll probably post a Venn diagram once this is uploaded onto YouTube and whatnot, because I do want to at least put up some like sort of like
visual aids and whatnot for
whatnot.
You, the viewer.
Yes. So you're not looking at our fucking, our logo throughout the fucking thing and shit. You know what I mean?
Well, some people just like to listen to this while they like study or fucking like read or something. I don't know. Sorry, folks. This ain't Skinamax. I could be shirtless right now and you wouldn't even know.
Whoa. That's the Parasocial After Dark podcast.
Oh my fucking god. No, I thought the Parasocial After Dark podcast where we talk about true crime.
No, that's called Last Podcast on the Left.
Oh man. But yeah, like as I was saying, so yeah, like I think that because I was having a sort of like biking thought earlier. It's like a shower thought, but more so related but it comes around when I'm like riding my bike. I was thinking about what we were going to be talking about on the podcast, like, this time. And I was thinking, like, about, like, how sometimes, yeah, there's communities that come about at, like, there's fandoms that come about that the reason why I say, like, we separate it into, like, a community versus, like, say, the fandom is because when something gets big enough, it's still, I mean, it's still technically a fandom in a sense, but I feel like it's an inappropriate term because in some instances, I think that people could, like, you put, like, certain things as, like, a fandom that shouldn't be considered a fandom, I guess.
Like what?
Socially related things, I should say. I don't want to say anything like specific lest I accidentally say something fucked up. Because again, it like my thoughts are weird on it, so that's why I was thinking about that a little bit.
Right. Because, again, there is a social aspect to all this sort of shit and whatnot. Like, there's probably, like, studies and journals related to, the sociology behind, like, fandoms and all this sort of, like, subcultures and, like, all that sort of shit, too. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Do you have is there anything else you want to talk about or, like, anything else you want to like, bring
All
forward?
related to the community aspect.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, of course, because this was like a thing that I was thinking about the whole time. So it's like with the brony community, for example. It's like we've gotten so big, it's become a community rather than like a full blown fandom with like subcultures and groups within.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, I wanted to bring up that little thing earlier because I said I was talking with a friend of mine who's a furry, and they brought up like they said something along the lines of like furries are furries everybody's like been exposed a little bit or something like that to it, I guess.
Yeah.
And like the bronies are like no exception. It's somewhat of a part of it, I guess, because we have our own little like pony sonas, at least some people and whatnot, and or they have like other stuff related to they have like maybe a different type of species sona in there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So
Again,
so
they kind of get, like, lumped together because, again, it's sort of like
yeah.
it is sort of like a little subsection of the furry fandom and all that sort of shit because of, like, it basically did, like, branch out from, like, people who were fans of, like, cartoon horses and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
Now, like this is where I'd bring up my little thing that I said, because when we were discussing that in the same tune, I was talking to them about Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they were talking about that, I brought up, I said like, oh, like it's kind of like the Imperial Knights and the Jedi Order. And I got to explaining like what I got to explain it because what that was is so like I said this along the lines of this, so it's like the bronies are the Imperial Knights to the furries Jedi Order, because yes, I know it's silly, but I know it's silly, but it really does have to do with like the idea behind both in the sense, because in Star Wars, right, the Jedi Order were around for like fucking millennia. What the Imperial Knights are, like, I don't even need to explain the Jedi Order. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows what the fuck the Jedi are. But what the Imperial Knights are, right? So when the Empire turned into the Fell Empire after all of the shit that happened in between Return of the Jedi and fucking the Legacy era, right?
Yeah.
So the Emperor of the Fell Empire was essentially a Force. They were Force adept. They knew how to use the Force. So there's some shit. So they were technically the leader of like their faction of Force users and whatnot, and they made their own faction of Force users. So what the Imperial Knights are, they're sort of an offshoot of the Jedi Order. Like they're the Fell Empire's version of the Jedi Order that is under their jurisdiction and whatnot, right?
Right.
The Imperial Knights refer to the Jedi in the story as cousins, not like how like warriors under a kingdom would do that to like essentially good friends and whatnot, something like that. If I remember like my Shakespeare correctly, they did that in a lot in Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
I said like yeah, it's like I get, so that means like our bronies have our furry cousins and whatnot. So they're the ones we kind of have to like thank for like the, you know, I guess like the whole like idea, I guess, of exploring with like the sonas and whatnot. So like I said, it's all connected there and shit.
Yeah, like everything's connected together and all that sort of stuff and whatnot. Again, we're fucking we're just complex beings and all that sort of shit. Like we have our own, we have our own like sort of like fucking things, interests and everything like that that like, you know, kind of shape us of who we are and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. That's just how we roll and whatnot. It
Yeah.
always goes back to the weird tribalism. But no, I'm fucking around. Well, you know, we are
We
going
joke
to
around
discuss.
here.
Well, no. Well, yes, we do, but I did want to talk about that part of fandoms for a sec too.
Oh, like the sort of tribalism and all that sort of
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, we're going, you know, we're going into like the deep shit now, boys.
Yeah.
Cuz what
There's no
was it?
turning back afterwards.
Well, mainly because, like I said, Zig was doing his research on his side of like the history and whatnot, right? So I always, because I'm always in the sauce sometimes, right? I'm always like watching something related to something like that. I just like information.
Uh-huh.
All I kind of do is like I just watch something, and it'll always end up going back to like fandoms and doing something stupid relating to them.
No,
So
I've seen like my fair share of just like fandoms being like genuinely fucking like, you know, toxic, brutal. I guess those would be two words to describe it or some shit like that. I saw it happen with like the whole Steven Universe thing when that one artist got harassed for making like rose quartz like thin and all that sort of shit like that. And like I actually did poke fun of that too when I just basically drew like I just drew a stick figure, put like
rose quartz, just put an
put like
arrow. It says
put
rose
like
quartz.
pink. I drew a fucking stick figure, put
Yeah.
pink hair on it and like a little star like around the midsection and was like, "Hey guys, look, it's rose quartz," and all that sort of stuff.
That pissed off a
Mainly,
bunch of
mainly as to make fun of those who like fucking her, like mainly to make fun of those who harassed her and all that sort of shit because that was like
many Tumblrites were pissed off that day, I tell you.
it actually never got any fucking traction. Though this one artist I
Well,
did like actually did. There was this one artist I was a fan of, did like it and all that sort of shit. So that was just like, hey, little bump from that and shit. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, that's cool. But
Yeah.
like I'm always in the sauce like that, right? So
Uh huh.
I'm always, so like not to say that I always see it, but
Or
like
that you try to seek out any of this sort of shit. It just fucking.
it's fine. It comes to my door. It just comes to my door
Mm-hmm.
without my intervention. So I'm going to approach the like I'm going to approach this from like a couple of angles here, because this also kind of has some stuff that bothers me about fandom. I think that, you know, both me and Zig are in full agreement here before we really go into this, because I know Zig just his whole piece on this, right?
Uh huh.
Or if, unless you had more.
No, go right ahead. Like the
Okay.
floor is
But yeah,
yours.
me and Zig are in both agreement. Like one or a few bad apples don't spoil the bunch.
Yeah, no, you can still enjoy something without having to deal with like people being assholes and all that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
Just because there's assholes in a fandom doesn't mean that the whole fandom is assholes.
Right. There's just like a whole bunch of toxic fans and all that sort of shit and whatnot. And that's more so of that's more so like a whole general thing
It's
and
a
all that sort of.
generalization of like the whole thing than it
Yeah.
is more so. Like I take a lot of like weird things to heart. Even in like good, well, it just shouldn't be just like, I was gonna say like the Transformers wiki says about the Maximals, but I was just gonna say like this really just goes so in general with stuff. There's jerks in the good guys. There's jerks in the good guys. It's always gonna be a thing. That's just how people work and are and whatnot. The main, so like the main thing that I wanted to talk about, I have a few of examples of, like, you know, one of them being Star Wars related. We'll get to that. I'll save the best for last. My oldest take on fandoms, on like bad or like mad fandoms, like the Flame Wars and that type of shit, right?
Uh huh.
Was what I called the Triforce of shit. The three Nintendo fandoms that were the worst. one of them was one of the Nintendo Phantoms that was the worst was Metroid. The other Nintendo Phantom that was the worst was Star Fox, and the third Nintendo Phantom was the worst was The Legend of Zelda. That's why I named it the Triforce of shit, because it was Nintendo related and all that other stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
So again, this is based off of my experiences in these communities and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I like a lot of things, flaws and all, right? I will admit to flaws in something, but I still enjoy it despite that, right?
Because not everything is perfect, and
Nothing's fucking perfect. Trust me on that. Like nothing is perfect. Well, if everything was perfect, everything would be fucking boring. I'd be honest with you.
uh-huh.
Never cook by never cook 100% by the book. As long as you're like, as long as you get the fundamentals, go crazy with something. Do something, like do something crazy when you're creating. That's
Do
besides
your
the
little
point.
spin on it and all that sort of shit.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly. That's why.
that's what you're trying. That's what you're trying to say there, Merrick. Is that
Yeah,
what?
that's why. Like I said, that's why we have like so many good iterations of Transformers. But that's besides the point, though. So I called it the Triforce shit because, especially at the time, all I ever saw between these three factions, like I'm talking about like a fucking war story here. Like I said, it always felt like I'm the only in my point of view. It always felt like I was the only sane person in the asylum because all it was ass for the longest time between these three.
Yeah.
Oh, Star Fox Assault sucks. Star Fox Adventures sucks. Like any Star Fox that's not 64 or the Super Nintendo games suck. But that was the Star Fox fan in a nutshell, and a lot of it was born from YouTube circle jerks. And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully a lot of those YouTubers that were in the circle jerks have been discredited for the most part. And they're kind of like, well, they still have following. It's just not like,
They're not.
decent following.
It wasn't as big as say back when they're back during their heyday and all that sort of shit. Is
Yeah,
that what you're
pretty
going with?
much.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
you got that on the head.
Uh huh.
So we hit we hit that with like a Star Fox, just the other thing. So the reason, and I even said it, like the Star Fox was the worst one because that was like such belligerence, such back and forth. No laurels, no flowers for anything that wasn't 64 for the most part. Metroid was the second worst. Metroid was the middle child of the worst line because a lot of people were in agreement that pretty much all the games were good with the exception of like Other M, which I highly disagree with. And I think that, again, the hatred for that game was born out of a YouTube circle jerk rather than an extensive look at what the game holds and whatnot. I honestly think it holds a lot of candles up to the Metroid canon as a whole, but that didn't stop people from like hating on it anyway. And the post Other M situation got even worse because like how dare Nintendo release a spin-off game? It's not the right time. I have a whole video in the works on that whole debacle, but I really do got to say that shit was like terrible, and it really made it feel like nothing made it worse than the freaking what was it, fucking AM2R, which was a fan game I played and thoroughly enjoyed. But I don't think it was like 100%. I don't think it like some of the aesthetics didn't feel like the series as a whole. It was a good fan game, it was a good experiment, but I wouldn't say it's like a great, Metroid game and whatnot. Oh, back then, people would fucking like I feel as though if you said those words like all right, so imagine if the internet wasn't like over a computer and people weren't just fucking keyboard warriors.
Uh huh.
If we were all in the same room, and I feel like if I said that, somebody or multiple people would have fucking shanked me. That's how bad it felt.
I guess, but at the same time too, it's like because of like the internet and like this sort of anonymity and all that sort of shit to it. You know what I mean? Like
I know
the
that like nobody would
people
have done anything,
people
but
would have been like people could be like more vitriolic because of that whole sort of deal. Again, if it was like in real life or some shit like that, they would probably be like, oh, okay, and then just like probably bitch about it in private with like somebody else or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
I get you. It's like I said. I'm just speaking from like what it feels like too, from what it felt like with that whole thing too. With the Metroid shit, it felt like people would fucking kill you if it was in like a room more so than it was like over that online discourse and crap like that. So thankfully, like the lesser of like the air of the shit fandom from my era, like when I was going on with this, was the Zelda fans, because this one wasn't so bad. More so, it was just like annoying fans that came from like Ego Raptors crap,
Oh,
like
because
the
of like
sequelitis and all that other
sequelitis
bullshit.
and like
Meanwhile, like Aaron lost his fucking like license to say this type of stuff when he literally proved that he can't play a fucking Zelda game to save his life. Oh
yeah,
my god, that Game Grumps playthrough of fucking Majora's Mask hurt me so bad.
I know,
And
and I know.
all it was belligerence, getting mad at people. It's like giving suggestions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
terrible. They didn't even have the gilded sword in Akana Canyon. Oh my god. What the fuck? Do the side content. Level yourself up instead of bitching. So yeah, that definitely fell off after like Ego Raptor kind of disappeared into the aether that is Game Grumps 100%. It's not so bad now, and I don't really follow like that Triforce of shit anymore, because honestly, all three fandoms for the most part chilled out. Because there's still some vitriolic people in the Metroid shit. I will never not deny that.
I think
Oh, I've had my encounters with snakes, dude. Oh my god, I've told Zig a lot. I actually
you
got
have told me a lot about that sort of shit, and I was just
of
going to
of
say, like regarding like that sort of belligerence, especially for like Metroid and shit. I think most of it was just because there wasn't really anything like before Dread and everything like that. There was just like nothing like released anything like Metroid wise or anything like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, I think a lot of their vitriol just stems from just like, hey, is there gonna be another Metroid game coming out? No, it's just this. And I think
I
and I think the same goes for like hell, even Star Fox to a lesser extent, because it's just like,
Well,
well, you
Zero was even I agree that Zero sucked.
yeah, it's like
That
you
was,
guys
oh
just
god.
wanted one thing where it's basically just a rail shooter and that's basically it.
I like
Like
again like the problem with the Star Fox was
there's not much you can really go beyond that and
they
shit.
they kept trying to appeal to 64 fans with stuff like Zero, and by that point a lot of people were very tired of a lot of like the people that were mostly vocal at that point were kind of tired of 64, so
Uh-huh.
it's neither here nor there. Though ironically, I a person who's kind of tired of 64. We still like 64 3D, and 64 is part of the series and whatnot. I'm loving the fan game, Star Fox Event Horizon, and that is in and of itself a retelling of 64 and somewhat of adventure. So again, it's neither here nor there. That's just how it is and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
like I said, thankfully a lot of these fandoms have chilled, maybe a little bit less for Metroid, but again, that's besides the point, right?
Right.
What I wanted to talk about, the second thing I wanted to talk about, so this kind of encapsulates like a few things that I really don't like when it comes to like people in fandom discourse, and this one kind of has to do with the Brony community, but it hits so hard with a lot of them. So the other day, well, I'm just gonna go over like the basis of what's going on right now with like the Brony community. So MLPG 5 wasn't great. I didn't watch it because I like the movie. I couldn't get a chance to watch the show, and from what I've seen, I was like, okay, this is not for me, but I'm glad it exists for the people who like it, right?
Yeah, it could have been like its own little sort of thing where, from what I've seen of it, it's like they didn't really give G5 a chance and all that sort of stuff. But then again, I don't fucking, I'm not a brony and I've never really was into the fucking community or any of that fucking shit.
Yeah.
I just knew people who were and whatnot. You know what I mean?
So like, my whole thing was I'm just gonna turn my back for a little bit and just be in my little just hang around with, like some G4 stuff, read comic books, rewatch the show, and I'm just gonna have it be a thing. Little did I know that a fucking like volcano was brewing underground, because cut to now, shit came to a head and exploded, like death threats, this, that, the other thing, right?
How so? Like, what the fuck happened?
People were sending death threats to like some of the actors and actresses for G5, and like a whole group on like Twitter started, which was essentially a give G4, like redo G4 season 10 or 9, whatever it ended on, and like bring back G4, and I'm like, bring back G4, and I'm like, their posts make me laugh, because me on both sides is let the show die. Let the show die. It had its fun in the sun. The fandom is still around. We're still doing fun shit. We're still doing fun stuff. Just let the show pass on, right?
Yeah, okay. So the thing is, I know I kind of like said this. We kind of discussed this like in our own private time and everything like that too.
Yeah. Because I had a whole like mini rant, I guess you could call it, about like what they wanted to do with G6.
Yeah, and the whole fucking like ponyverse shit where it's like you guys don't really have much to go off of. Like the only thing that really has substance is like G4 and maybe G5, but
and a bit of G1, like very very concentrated stuff from G1.
But other than that, it's like, like the thing too, like I was kind of like reading up on this and whatnot too, because
they changed it again.
I've heard some shit where it's like, oh, G4 was like lightning in a bottle. It could never be replicated again. And people were like, no, if you have the right talent, this shit you can duplicate it again and whatnot, because it wasn't just like Lauren Faust alone when it came to like its success and whatnot. You just had like a lot of the writers and everything like that who were able to like hone their own ideas and like say bounce off of the ones like that weren't maybe the best ideas out there and like somehow make it into something that was like at least decent or some shit like that. You know what I mean? For what I'm trying to say is like that sort of success can be fucking replicated if you do have like a team of like talented writers, producers, actors, and everything like that who can like come together and just be like, okay, what needs to be
and make something good.
Exactly.
Again, like it always comes down to like the perception of what's good for like people have like preferences and whatnot. But like so this brings me to like this video I watched where there was this one well I've seen a lot of like G5 discourse, like some people calling it like Coco Melon and like super millennial thing, and I'm like, okay, or like super Gen Z, and I'm like, okay,
whatever. I don't fucking care.
It makes me laugh a little bit because I find it funny. Cut to this one video I find, which was talking about the ending of G5, and this kid, oh my god, this poor sweet summer child, man. This kid did all of the things in a fandom that one never do, because it's not gonna look good, especially because he fucking contradicted himself after the fact too, because you'll never believe, well, you'll believe when I tell you what I saw after the fact, about a day later I should say. So this kid made this video going on and on and on about like, like he was glazing G5 whatever, right? Then he went on to be like, oh, the G5 fans are different than the G4 fans because blah blah blah, and then he even brought up like that give G4, like bring back G4 on Twitter again, and like he screenshot himself like fighting with somebody over like DMs or like comments. I'm like, so I really don't like when people try to be like, oh, we're the superior part of the fandom, because again, that in and of itself is only being toxic in its own right, and that's just like, oh dear lord, right? Mm-hmm. So on top of that, he's like, oh, we're I'm letting the show go down, whatever the frick, right? Like I had my fun with it, but like we're the better fandom, this is the other thing. So I said like, okay, at least he's letting the show die. So whatever, he's dumb, he doesn't understand, because he even talked about like some stuff related to like marketing involving like G6 with like the putting G4 characters and G5 characters together for it. Like this isn't doing anything new. Like, he didn't say that. This is my take on like the current thing. It's not doing anything new. I think this is a bad idea. Still, do its own thing, and there you go. You're gonna have like a good show on your hands, I bet.
Yeah.
But he's going like, oh, but this kid, he doesn't know how marketing works. Yeah, Hasbro uses the G4 characters because the G4 characters are popular and all this other crap. And like you said, he doesn't understand anything about the history of the series, it seems like, because G4 was the biggest hit considering how many people it drew in, and it made a whole fucking community and subculture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, this kid doesn't know shit. So I'm whatever. I say whatever. I stop watching. I'm like, this kid is dumb. It's funny dumb. So I go on with my day. I watch another thing like I watch another like MLP related like thing on YouTube, and then I see a recommended video from the same guy, right?
Oh,
I don't
okay.
watch this one though, but I read the title. What is it? Like he's trying. It says how I'm try or something along the lines of like I don't want to like try to give this away. I really like please don't send this person hate if you actually find it. But it was something like how they were trying to save G5, and I'm like, oh, what happened to the toxic fandom trying to bring G4 back? What happened to letting the show go? Why are you trying to? You know what I mean? Like.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I mean by like this is a dumb kid that's like, but you know, you like, oh, we're different. You're being just as toxic, if not more so, than the people you're demonizing, buddy.
Yeah.
Something you gotta learn, pal. You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing anything justice. You're a bad apple in the bunch. Especially
Yeah.
considering especially considering that like too a lot. I've seen some G5 people like curse out like people who have like G4 related stuff. So I'm surprised it hasn't happened to me yet, but I've seen it in the Discord sometimes. That being said, we're on to the we're on to the best for last. So we're coming back to my Star Wars. Oh my God, where do I begin with this? Because I already told you that I've already had my taste of me going like I feel like the only sane person in the asylum when I was a kid, and I don't think people should feel like that, especially children who get into fandoms and whatnot. Here I am. All right, so I'm just gonna sort of bring a wrap around to that story I gave. Like, so here we are post Disney acquisition, right? I am aged Marek right now. I am me. That is me now. Oh my God. So I'm not a fan. I've said it before. I've said it like earlier. I'm not a fan of the Disney stuff, right? I mentioned that earlier in this whole pod. You know it big time.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's watched my stuff kind of knows it. I always talk about like expanded universe lore in place of the Disney stuff. I'm just gonna say it right now. I wish that there was like a person I can talk to with a similar experience to me when it comes to Star Wars that is not a freaking asshole or a bigot that's just like ranting and grifting about Disney and Star Wars for like, you know, the rest of their freaking life. Like there's very few people that are like that on YouTube, like my similar discourse that talk about like old Star Wars lore essentially, right?
Yeah.
But oh my God, at the moment, like this grifter, like the Star Wars grifterverse is like eating itself.
As it should, because again, like these motherfuckers shouldn't have a fucking place if their fucking thing is just basically based off of just like fucking spite, hate, and anger for like you know a supposed like fucking enemy or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
Hell earlier last year, I want to say around Pride Month.
I remember
One of the
you. I
one
remember
of
you.
I showed you the whole thing, right? So the Star Wars lore guy I watched that talks about like expanded universe lore. That's his exclusive thing. He doesn't talk about anything Disney, right?
Mm-hmm.
He posted a video about an actual like confirmed canon to the expanded universe gay character, Juhani from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which is a Star Wars game that a lot of Star Wars fans have played and more than likely should know about if they've played the game like fully through and whatnot, right? Dude made a short about that. Oh my God, the fucking hate in the comments. He had to make a community post about it. And
Yeah, I remember that.
Jesus, it's so fucking like shitty. All right. I have a bunch of like personal headcanons, like unconfirmed gay and or trans characters in Star Wars. One of them is Zam Weasel, and another is Dev Sibwara from The Truce of Pakora, which is a book I'm reading right now. All I see come out of the Star Wars fandom is just vitriol, 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 vitriol. And it's never like something's taken in good faith. I don't even like any of the Disney shows. So like, before anybody goes like, oh, is it? I stopped caring after I watched Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. And I said, this shit ain't for me. I am kind of done. Good day. And I pissed off. I don't pay attention to this, right? All of the people that go against these shows, and as much as they claim they aren't, it's so freaking, like, a lot of them so freaking are. Oh my god. Because they don't complain about, like, the freaking, like, content of the show or something like that. It's always like I don't really care, but you secretly care. They do care. Oh, I don't care, they do care. No, if you didn't care, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. Because it's making you money.
You're just doing this to generate outrage and all that sort of shit.
A little while ago, actually, too, a bunch of the people that are very pro-Disney tried to get a bunch of the grift channels taken down, right?
Uh-huh.
It backfired on them. Cause and then another group, they tried to take out this one guy named Star Wars Theory. I don't really know his stuff. I think I've watched maybe one video of his before I said nah, I'm good on this. I don't think he's like a bigot though. I don't think he's anything fucked up. But I just saw just today before we started, I saw three remember the grifter channels were protecting Star Wars Theory because somebody was going after him. And because he works hard and all this stuff, whatever. I'm like, whatever. I don't watch this stuff. I just know about the whole discourse based off of some outside information that I've gotten. So now I see a couple more grifter types attacking Star Wars Theory. I'm like, so do they like this guy or do they hate this guy?
It just sounds like the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself and everything like that.
Yeah.
Sort of and again, this isn't exclusive to Star Wars and everything like that. I've seen this happen with fucking every other fucking subculture fandom under the sun, or where it's just they're saying oh, there's all of these fucking dumbass shit regarding a fucking character being say gay, female, whatever, and it's just nobody really fucking cares. Nobody as long as the character is well written and everything like that, and is again, none of these fucking things are really hurting anybody and whatnot.
My whole takeaway on this is have a problem with the character and the writing, not with the actor or actress that is just paid to do this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm gonna be honest with you because I've seen some shit where I've seen all of the promo stuff that some of these actors and actresses do. I'm gonna be honest with you. I honestly think they just say it as part of the paycheck thing. They're obligated. They don't do it because they're
doing it just to promote the series and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's just a big fucking PR.
And I'm honest too. I'm a
PR campaign or something.
My honest thought, if I can have one tiny conspiracy theory in this whole little thing, right?
Uh-huh.
I honestly think that Disney on purpose riles up these grifters for free advertisement. That's just my little thought there, though.
I'm sorry, I don't see that whatsoever. Because if that was the fucking case, you would see more people talking about this sort of shit. But it's I really don't hear about anybody talking about any of this fucking stuff.
Nobody who's in anybody, nobody's in anybody talks about it. People who are just firmly stuck in either the grift of so I honestly think the grift goes two ways. There's the grift for Disney and then there's the grift against Disney. People that are stuck in between the grifts are the ones who discuss this stuff. I stay out of it. I just talk about fucking
No, that's what I'm fucking saying. It's it's nobody I fucking know. The layman, the person my fucking coworkers, anything at my job, or outside of that, I hear nobody fucking talking about anything in deeper detail or any of that sort of shit. You know what I mean? I really don't think it's given them this sort of publicity or anything like that to make it look like it's better or even like worse or any of that sort of shit. It's just fucking there. You know what I mean?
Because something that completely changed my whole like outlook on this. What at one point was somebody made this like great distinction. All of the fucking grifter channels back when like the movies were coming out, like the three big movies, like 7, 8, and 9 or whatever, right?
The Disney trilogy and all that sort of
Yeah,
shit.
the Disney trilogy would be a better explanation. So the Disney trilogy, whenever those came out, when the grifters were going after the movies, so I opted to never go see them myself because I'm not giving them money. The grifters would say, "Oh, don't go to see the movie. Like it's not worth it. Don't give me your money, right?" But then they would all go to see the movie just to try to be the first person with a review that's like shitting on it because they know that's what brings in the bucks. And then they'd make an excuse of how or why they went to see the movie rather than stick to their guns and not see the fucking movie because they know that, having an angry audience is what brings in their fucking money. So that's why, like I don't like the fact that like the fandom. So I don't like a lot of discourse with Star Wars fandom people because I don't agree with 99.9% of them. I move through the Star Wars universe by the beat of my own drum, and that's what I stick to. So, yeah, that's my discourse on fandom insanity. And again, as I say, me and Zig agreement. Just to reiterate, bad people in a fandom don't mean the fandom bad. There are outliers, of course. There's like just because a few of the bushels of apples in the orchard were bad doesn't mean the whole orchard has gone bad. Sweet Apple Acres would have a horrible.
Oh,
sorry.
No, Marek's dying from the sweet apple.
I got the blight.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me take a sip. Sweet Apple Acres would have a horrible fucking harvest that year. They'd go out of business.
Like if you enjoy something, don't be afraid to like express it or anything like that. Let people have their own let people really just have their own sort of fun. That's basically my whole takeaway from like this whole thing and shit. You know what I mean? So,
everybody's entitled to their own form of having fun with it, and that's the fairest anybody could be about it, really.
Yeah.
From the people who enjoy the Tumblr sexy men to the people who enjoy like dingling in fandom discourse or like
just talking about like some weird canon inconsistencies or any sort of weird fucking thing
without getting people talk about weird canon inconsistencies without getting into fights over it.
Yeah, being civil with all this sort of shit and all and whatnot. That's sorry. From what I'm trying to say is I want to leave it at that and whatnot. You know what I mean? I don't want to discuss it any further because this fucking recording is already fucking long enough as it is and shit. You know what I mean?
4-hour podcast. 4-hour podcast. 4-hour podcast. 4-hour podcast.
That would be a huge fucking nightmare to edit, man. Oh man, I'm like.
It's past Zig's bedtime.
Yeah. Anything else you want to fucking discuss and shit, or is that?
I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about, or I could pretty much talk about from my experiences and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm in that fucking same boat as you are. You want to.
My closing remark would have to be like, just be kind to each other when it comes to fandom shit. That's basically it.
Yeah, just
like
be kind.
If you want stuff to be better
and all that sort of shit like that.
That's pretty much it. Because it's like everybody's in the shit, no matter like, everybody's in the shit no matter like what toilet you got flushed down. So like bringing it back to like to the toilet I go. You could say that about any fucking fandom or anything. Welcome to the sewer of fandom. Everybody has opinions and they all stink. Yay!
Yeah, but honestly, it's just like we're all in the same boat. We came here because we all have an appreciation for like say anything sci-fi, fantasy, Star Wars, Star Trek, video games, anime, any sort of like anything related to that. We're all here because we have an appreciation for it, and we want to express that appreciation by any means necessary. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be fanfic, fan art, fan projects, anything regarding that. You know what I mean?
Hell, this
So
whole time I've been kind of fidgeting around with like a figure I have of Gasgano from the Phantom Menace.
you see, I fucking showed off the goddamn statue of Superman that's been in my stead ever since I was like a little fucking kid and whatnot. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a good way to close it off here. It's just like, don't be a fucking asshole. That's
Be kind to each other.
I think that's a good way to end it off here for now. So viewers,
You guys tell us how your day was and what are your fun fandom stories down in the podcast. Down in the comment. Fuck.
Down in the comment section below and shit. Like, tell us about your
If you're somehow not listening to us on YouTube, I don't know. You could talk it out loud. We hear you because we're here for you.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you all later. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.